Right, it's Jamie Jewett here with OUTBX Entertainment. I'm speaking to none other than Fabio Wardley, the British heavyweight champion. Fabio, good to see you again. I haven't seen you since you've been on the podcast. How you been?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Good to see you too. Hope you're all right. How's things?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Busy, busy, my end. Anyway, look, on busy, talking about busy, on that note, yourself, what's going on? When did you fight back in April, wasn't it? Michael Coffey. Back in November before that, you won the title from Nathan Gorman. What you been up to, mate? What's on the cards for you?
Just chilling, soaking up in the sun. That's what I've been doing.
Tired.
Nah. Yeah, I'm close to retirement, man. I'm on the edge. No, I'm only joking. Yeah, I had obviously two good fights back to back, two good wins, two new belts, two new titles, which is good. So we're just planning the next big move really, and what we're looking to do next. I'm in a I'm in a mix of a fortunate and a difficult position, to be honest, because I've got a few different avenues I can go down. I could go follow the British route if I wanted to and hunt some people in that. I've recently obtained the WBA Continental, so I could chase that line now as well. And then as well as the Commonwealth and European, those belts are able if I want to go chase some new ones. So I'm in an interesting place, and we're just weighing up pros and cons, options. What do we think's best for my career, my development, and kind of where we want to kick on to next?
Let's talk about your development because I mean you've already achieved an enormous amount. Everybody knows your background. You come from white collar boxing, British champion. Again, I was ringside for that fight. Absolutely incredible fight, demolition job. And now you've got the British title. Again, for your background, it's a hell of an achievement. But obviously, you got the talent and the skill set and the promise to go further. But at this very minute, you're sat at British heavyweight champion level. What's it like being the titleist now? And how are you looking in terms of getting a fight over the line to defend that? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's an interesting position because I've got a clear target on my back, albeit a very nice shiny target, but it's a target nonetheless, which means you get people who want to have a go on you, say they think they can beat you and they can do this, that, and the other. But it's also a very weird limbo place because then when people say these things, they come with a lot of yeah, but and this and that and the other, and you think, well, hang on, I'm the champion. If anyone's got a yeah, but it should be me.
Mm.
But that's the kind of a stumbling block we're running into in a few different places. It's a it's a plus and a minus as well that boxing's a bit split between obviously a few different promoters, a few different broadcasters as well. So that poses a few different problems in terms of putting fights together. To be honest, as we're seeing up and down the board throughout the heavyweights. But for me in particular, if I want to get onto some of those British title fights, them quite big, quite interesting fights. They take a bit of doing. There's a bit of quote unquote politics in the middle of it, but there's some sorting out to be done along the way. So it's not as plain sailing as just you want to have a fight? Yeah, you want to have a fight? Yeah, cool, great. See you next week, kind of thing. It's
Yeah, in the car
there's
park.
a bit more in it. Yeah, exactly. There's a bit more involved at the moment. So I thought maybe it'd come a bit easier having a belt, and it's a lot more of an incentive for people to say, look, I've got a belt, here you go, come and have a go. And yeah, it's almost proven the reverse and a bit more difficult.
Well, let's talk about that because looking at the lay of the land, the heavyweight scene, especially the British heavyweight scene, talking about contenders for your potential title. You got David Adelaide's over with Frank Warren. You got Fraser Clark over with Sky Sports and Boxer. We already know there was a very unfortunate. I don't obviously know exactly what happened there. I'm not sure if you know exactly what happened or even Fraser knows exactly what happened. It's very hard to figure out the truth around that scenario, but clearly politics got in the way a bit. And again, outside of those two, it's sort of difficult to know who is going to be next in line for a title shot. So obviously the two main competitors there are going to be difficult to get in the ring, not only because they may or may not want to. I think they both probably do want to. One wants to fight for the British title. But there's some difficulties there. Is that frustrating for yourself? How does that feel being in that position?
Yeah, massively. Because ultimately, all I want to do is just I want to have those big fights, those big moments. I think about my career in the longevity and looking back on things. I want to look back on a fight and go, yeah, that was a it was a big fight. It was a big occasion. It was a big event, like the Nathan Gorman one, which was a proper battle, a back and forth, a test. People go, "Kai, yeah, that was a proper entertaining." They're the type of spectacles I want to be involved in, but you need the right dance partner for that. You need the right build. You need the right people behind you and people motivated to do it. So yeah, when I'm hunting for those kind of moments, there it proves a bit more difficult when there's a lot more almost just fluff in the middle that kind of prevent those things happening. So like you say, David and Fraser seem like the most likely two. They are two big fights and two I'm very interested in. Like you say, the Fraser situation is we're past it now. It is what it is. But he's not off the list. He's probably just at the bottom of the list, but he's still on there somewhere. So David would probably be one of the most likely next candidates. But again, like you say, currently with a different promotional outfit, with a different broadcaster and things. So that has its own individual problems, but not something impossible, just makes the process a bit longer.
It's interesting. I'll talk a little bit later on about that because obviously boxing and politics and a few things going on. Let's talk about the heavyweight scene. In that, there's plenty to talk about in the heavyweight scene, even if you look at world title level, with the Furies and the Joshuas and the Usyks and the Wilders and all of that stuff that's going on right now. So it's obviously, it doesn't matter what level it is, it can get in the way. But more about your career and what's coming up. Obviously, like you said, the WBA, Continental, the European, the Commonwealth, all of these different stepping stones up to the top. You mentioned development. Now, at the British title level, would it be your preference to stay here for a bit and have a couple more fights before you move on to world level? I know you definitely strike me as someone that will fight anyone at any second. What's the feeling around your team at the moment? What's the chats going on? Have you had that convo? What do you know if that's kind of the plan, is to sort of have a few more at this level before you step up?
Yeah, I think for a number of reasons, really, because it would be nice for one to win the British outright. So 3 defenses of that belt would be good. Yeah.
I was just about to say, is that the rule? Is 3 defenses and then you keep it as in the hardware you keep and
Yeah.
down as okay, interesting.
So then it's yours to keep. So they don't take it back off you. So yeah, 3 defenses of that to keep the belt was quite a nice achievement in itself. Not many people do it, especially not in the heavyweight division. The pool's relatively thin of competitors at that level, so it's quite a difficult feat to achieve. So that'd be a nice little kind of milestone to tick off for one. And more so for a profile building thing as well, because it's a lot easier for the fans to tune in, to get behind fights where they know the fighters as well. Like if I fight like a Fraser Clark and Dave Adelaide or whatever, other people have watched them in the UK kind of come up, watch their careers and however. So you get more eyes on you, more people are interested in the fight, more just it reaches more people. Whereas I could probably fight an international opponent who the UK may not be too aware of, but is either of the same skill set or maybe even better. But you probably get a bit less credit for it because they're like, oh, well, I don't really know him. If I beat him in whatever fashion, they're a bit like, well, yeah, we kind of expected you to win either way. Whereas if they watch the other fighter come up and they have their building fights and I have mine, and then we come together, there's a bit more. It gives the public a bit more to latch onto. So those, in terms of building my profile as well, would be good before moving on to kind of fringe world level fight, something like that. So yeah, there's good reasons behind why we should just kind of not sit still, but kind of enjoy where we are for the time being. Use what's around us and then build that and move forward.
That's a smart move. And it makes me laugh when you say that because it is so true about boxing fans. If they don't know the name of someone or they've never heard of them personally, apparently they're always a bum.
Yeah. Literally.
Work.
Literally.
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about 2 big profiles coming together, I have to admit, I have seen a little post from none other than the White Rhino, Dave Allens, saying that he's got news and he can't say what it is. And just part of my head was like, come on, Fabio, let's hope that's the British title. Because not that he's been very active, but where he has been, I can completely see the board being like, this would be a great curveball fight. What a fucking monumental fight that would be for both of you. And talk about profiles colliding. That would be incredible. Is there any little figments of truth to that, or am I just barking up the wrong tree there?
Don't get me wrong, Dave was definitely someone we was talking to, and he was a candidate on the list. But whatever he's announced, there's nothing to do with me. Well, I hope it doesn't anyway, because if it does, I don't know anything about it. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. So people are making agreements behind my back without me knowing. But no, whatever Dave announcement is hasn't got anything to do with me anyway. It's not directly. So no, it'll be good to see. It'll be good to see Dave back, because these were part of the conversations we had with him. To be honest, that look, don't get me wrong, you've achieved some things in the past, but you've been on a bit of a hiatus. You've been a bit missing, and the British public needs to see you again. To be honest, they need to see you. You say you're training harder, you're fitter, you're healthier, you're taking the sport seriously. All of that is great, but the fans need to see you. They need to see you in action. They need to see these improvements to give more kind of value to the fight, to where people go, actually, yeah, he does look pretty solid, to be honest. So he's worthy of jumping in for a British title shot. So hopefully, whoever he's got or whatever fight he's got is a good opponent, and he puts in a good performance, and then maybe we can put something together.
That's a really good point, to be honest. When we were just talking about the fans and how they would view it, for someone that has been so inactive, regardless of what he's achieved, it might even shoot you in the foot if you took that straight away when he hasn't fought, because then you wouldn't get the credit if you were to win. I guess it's smart, and I'm looking forward to seeing him come back. He's a great character, and I think both of you fighting down the line would be one I would definitely be fighting for a ringside ticket for. That's for sure. So just before we move on to other the rest of the heavyweight landscape, obviously I know you've told me you're in a frustrating position. Are there any talks going on right now? Are you sort of in advanced talks with anything, or is it still stagnant your end and you're just sort of waiting to see? Is there a couple of options there?
Yeah, again, we're still just flutting around with the options to see what we think is best, what we can put together. Because we also want to. I want to pick a path and then go, right, this is where I'm going with it. I'm going down this route. I don't want to 1 minute pick the British title and then have a fight and then go, oh, it's not really working out. Let's now try the WBA, and then that hasn't really worked. All right, cool. Let's try European. And I want to kind of just stick on a path, stick on a route, and keep moving forward in that direction. So it takes a bit of time to put together, check kind of who's around, who's available, who's fighting, who'd be willing to fight, when and where we can put these fights on, things like that. So there's a lot of we're having a lot of conversations. There's a lot of things are talking, things are progressing. We're moving along. Not always at the pace I would like, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, the game is the game. So you just kind of have to ride it out and sit patient in some of these moments to ensure that when it is finally, okay, green light, go time, everything's set, everything's ready. You haven't got to fuss around anymore, and you can just get things moving.
Nice. And in this situation outside of a fight, how often are you in the gym? Are you staying super fit? And what's your schedule look like?
Yeah, I'm still in the gym twice a day at least. There's no difference for me. I'll take a real serious break immediately after a fight, where I probably won't go back for maybe a week, and then I'll ease in with maybe a one a day, something like that. And then after about a month or so of that, I'll be back to just twice a week, full time, back in the gym, just training and staying ready. Because I think it's a key element, I think, of maybe a lot of people. It's actually something I learned very early on in my career. That being a boxer is a lifestyle, not on camp, off camp, and which is very much how I used to view it when I first started out. In my first maybe 2 or 3 fights, I'd be like, I'm in camp, and then when I finish camp, I'm out of camp. You would not see me for a month, 2 months at a time, until I got the call to say you got another fight date. All right, cool. I'll go back in the gym. But if not, I could be anywhere. You wouldn't know where I was. So I had to learn that kind of the rough way of 2 or 3 times you go back into camp and you're like, you feel like you started at like square one again. You're like, hang on, what is going on here? Like, what's happened? You feel like your body would hold on to it for a bit longer, but it doesn't. You give yourself a couple of weeks and you're on your way back to square one. So yeah, for me, staying on the ball, maintaining, keeping consistent over time is the main thing for me. Because then, if you, as the old adage goes, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Exactly. And I guess having that British title, you're the king of the hill in Britain. So you definitely need to be staying ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, let's talk a little bit about Dillian White. Obviously, has been a major part of your career. He's in talks with Anthony Joshua. Looks promising now from what I've seen. Do you think we'll see that fight, and how do you see that rematch going?
Yeah, it's funny because I was up and down on this because I wasn't sure, like, I didn't really know. I wasn't too convinced early on, and then I was a bit like, okay, maybe we're getting there. So yeah, it does. It's looking likely by what we're hearing, which is interesting, which is good as well because especially me and a lot of other people, other boxing fans or whatever else, I've been saying it's the fight that makes the most sense for the
Mhm.
both of them at this exact point in their careers. They both come off beating the same opponent, so that's a solid base point for them both to work with and go right. Okay, now we should come back around and meet each other again. Sometimes the long drawn out back and forth does add to it and take away from a bit of the like effect of it. Imagine if it was just we didn't hear nothing, then a weekend, boom, the fight's announced. That would bring a lot of here we go, like proper one of those. But whether we get it, however we get it, as long as we get it, I think is the best thing for the fans and the best thing for them as well, and it will really kind of settle things for them.
I think it is going to be an interesting one because I'm very hopeful that it's going to happen at this stage based on what I've seen. And like you've said, they've come off beating the same opponent in a similar fashion, to be
Mm,
fair. He was quite unknown, frankly, but clearly a good fighter. And both of their careers are at a stage where this rematch is a massive fight for the two of them. There's a lot of bad blood. I believe it's 1-1, one from the amateurs and
mm,
pros. There's so much background to it. And the first fight, Joshua got wobbled. It was it was
mm,
a fire fight, and then he eventually knocked out Dillian. But I can't help but see that the fight is a real pick'em at this stage. It was a pick'em beforehand.
mm.
Who would you pick?
I'd obviously have to back deal, but I genuinely, it's probably no one would believe me anyway. But my bias aside, I would back deal. I think he's still got that fire in him, that dog in him, that bit to because it is a very close, a very even fight. They have different attributes, but they both use very well. They're both big guys. They're both strong. They both punch very hard. Like there's a lot of things across the board where they're both very solid at. But I think sometimes the deciding factor in fights can be who really wants to, who really wants this more, who really wants to bite down on that gum shield. Your nose is bleeding, you cut this, that, and the other, but you're just like, I'm going through this wall and I'm going to come out on the other side. And I think at this point of both of their careers, Deal just has that desire a lot more.
Yeah, would you buy into? There's a lot of talk about Joshua's mentality seems to have changed. I think based on a few of his fights, it could be argued that could potentially be true. Do you see that in Joshua? Do you think his intention and his kind of mindset has changed in the ring?
Yeah, I could see that a strong case for it definitely because we used to seeing, or we had been for a long time used to be seeing the Joshua of old that would he was big, strong, imposing, and when he got his guy going, he let off 7, 8, 9, 10 punches, combinations, big shots as well, and they were good, controlled, close together. It was what we were expecting to see him, and in 9 times out of 10, he'd got the guy out of there, but in recent times, we've not seen that so much. We've seen a lot more. He's he's focused a lot more on his core boxing skills, which is obviously very good. But I think somehow in there, along that way, a bit of that killer instinct has either been pushed to the side, it's gone missing, or whatever else. But it's not there like we used to see. And I think that was a such a big factor as well. Is what made Joshua so imposing that once he got a sniff of getting you going, you was getting hammered with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shots. So it'd be interesting if he could bring that back for the Bill fight.
I think Dillian would probably be the one that brings it back out in him, to be honest. And
Mm,
given
that's
their
what I mean. If anyone's going to bring it out,
that might be the one. And again, with both of them, it might be great to see that for both of their careers. Whatever happens in that fight, it might be really beneficial for the two of them. A bit of bad blood of Joshua, and I know Dillian wants that rematch to settle the score. So We'll see. Moving on, obviously, Joe Joyce. Now, the reason I ask you about all of these guys, if you're moving up to the world levels, the fringe world levels, obviously, I know you're going to be up there very soon. A lot of these guys, potential opponents of yours. Joyce and Zhang rematch. Do you believe that is the right choice for Joyce? How do you see that going? Do you think he can turn it around and beat him?
Yeah, I do. I think sometimes, well, especially for Joyce, at this point of his career as well, and he's always, since he started, he's always been a bit on a fast track and a bit on the, he's always been a bit on the older side of the division as well, especially for when he started. So he hasn't really got time to be going, oh, I'll maybe take one or two in the middle to get back to things and then go. Unfortunately for him, by design, he has to jump straight back in. But I also think it's the best kind of medicine for that kind of loss is to just jump straight back on the horse and get going again. Because although he got caught repeatedly with the same shot, which obviously led to the eye flaring up and him having to be stopped. He was still there. He was still competent. He was still on. He was still firing back. He was still throwing shots. He still had enough energy in the tank and stuff. So there's not, it sounds weird to say, but there's not major things to work on. It's just almost that singular punch just to keep your head off center a bit more and stay switched on in those moments. So you know the key factor you need to work on. So spending the whole camp to make sure you're paying attention to that thing is quite not easily remedied, but it's a simple remedy, I think.
That's a really good way of putting it. And yeah, I think you're right. There's a massive difference between being knocked out and being stopped. And he was stopped by an injury, like you said. He was. Joyce has always been somebody that builds and builds and builds, whilst the opponent of his just gets sort of
Less and less.
broken down, don't they? So, and I believe it looked like he could have even been doing that were it not for the eye. I do think there was a slight bit. It maybe looked like Joyce was a little bit too confident and didn't mind taking shots in the opening. But again, if he changes that, we'll see what happens. But again, that's a great one to look out for.
Yeah.
The last one I want to ask you about, I don't believe we're going to see Fury Usyk anytime soon, so I won't ask you about that one. I want to ask you about Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, because are we to believe the news? It looks like that's actually happening in December. What do you, I mean, we're talking about Joshua's mindset. Dillian might bring that dog back out. But someone like Wilder's dangerous, and I feel like what sort of fight do you think Joshua needs to fight there? And do you think he can beat the likes of a Wilder?
I definitely think he can beat him. Yeah. I definitely think he can. Joshua's a very big puncher himself, maybe not as sharp as Wilder, but still a very big puncher. He's physically imposing, he's strong, he's fast, he's big, so he can use all those factors in the fight. Obviously, Wilder's got that dynamite right hand that can just catch you at any moment. So I almost think you can, not you can't remove it because you obviously need to very much pay attention to that. But that's a fact. That's going to be a factor regardless. I think AJ needs to almost take a page out of Fury's book when he fought Wilder and just keep him on the back foot, keep him pressed. Because Joshua's definitely a better boxer than Wilder. He's got more base skills, more base ability. So I think if he stays core to those and keeps him pressed in the right way, keeps him backing up, you can tuck up and keep yourself nice and tight and locked in. But because Joshua's so big, he can absorb some shots whether they hit him on the shoulder, arm, forearm, wherever, and keep marching down Wilder, who we've seen doesn't really enjoy fighting off the back foot. So I think if you kind of employ those things and stay focused on them, Joshua's got a very, very strong chance of winning.
That's really interesting you said that, because I do believe that is where this can weigh one way or the other, is if what side of Joshua we see. And ironically, we are going to need to see the aggressive side. I believe Tyson Fury showed the blueprint to beat Wilder. Let's face it, Wilder's been outboxed comprehensively for a matter of rounds in multiple other fights, but still got that knockout. So he's very good at landing that and setting out, whether it takes him 2 rounds or 12. He landed it like Luis Ortiz, and even Gerald Washington was outboxing him. There was people out there that were showing you can box this guy, but he out.
Stay switched on.
Yeah. The longer you're in there, the worse this can be for you. So it might be that we need Joshua to be aggressive, but very, very like controlled aggression, calculated aggression, like you've said. So that's an interesting one. If you're putting your house on it, what are you putting it on? Who are you putting it on?
Oh, um,
This is why it's a great fight, by the way, because you can't just choose it.
it's hard. Yeah, it's very hard. If I was a betting man, I would. It's almost painful to say because I do always want to back a Brit, but I'd probably give it to Wilder. I think it's very difficult, especially with the way Joshua's been as of late.
Exactly.
Um, I think you would have to edge it more to Wilder because the way Joshua has been as late plays more into what benefits Wilder with Joshua being a bit cuter with his boxing, trying to stay at range and distance, and I think that leads you in more to get caught. I think Wilder said a few times himself, you may be switched on for every minute of every fight, but I only need to be switched on for 1 second, and then you're switched off basically.
Yeah.
So to be fair, another factor in it is Wilder himself and how he's going to turn up because he's had a changing coaching staff with adding in Malik Scott, and Malik is doing a similar thing. He's going through a similar process with him as to what's been going through with Joshua, where they're making Wilder a bit cuter and focusing more on his boxing IQ and trying to get him to box a bit smarter and things like that. So maybe that plays in, and maybe Wilder doesn't always let off that right hand, and maybe he is a bit smarter in situations and things. So there's a few different variables to bounce around through it. So it's never a foregone conclusion. That's why, like you say, that's what makes it so interesting.
Mm. As we've talked about them all, this is just a fan question for me because I love the hypotheticals. Say you had to choose one of those guys to fight for your next fight. Your Wilder, Fury, Usyk, Joshua, White. Obviously, White's tough one. Stylistically, you have to get in the ring with him tomorrow. Who would you choose out of those guys?
Um, I'd probably choose. To be fair, can I just wait till they all retire and have a go then? Nah, I'd probably choose Wilder, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, it's high risk, high reward. There's a lot of danger involved. Um, and I could get switched off just as quick as the next person. But I think I'd be able to maintain that distinct pressure in front of him and keep him underwears.
You feel like you've almost seen more of a blueprint to beat him than the others. Is that like you kind of feel like you've seen the out of all of them the key there?
Yeah, yeah, but I also feel like his blueprint is one I think I could emulate a lot better than maybe the others.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, listen, obviously, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you get up to next. I hope it's a fight that you really want yourself. Really looking forward to your next announcement, whether it be Adelaide or Fraser Clark side of the politics, or whether you start stepping yourself up. Can't wait to watch you again. Hopefully, I'll be ringside again because all your fights have been crackers. And thanks for talking to me, mate. And maybe I'll catch up with you again soon.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Definitely. We'll speak soon.
Cheers, bro. Chat to you in a bit.
Well, bud.